Halloween is right around the corner, so I figured I'd make a little video to bring in the season. I'm not sure how Halloween is celebrated in other countries, but in the United States it's a pretty big holiday. And today we're going to be talking about bats, which is a very classic Halloween animal and symbol. So as most of us know, bats are very interesting animals in that they are one of the few animals that uses this very interesting thing called echolocation. And today we're going to talk about echolocation. So echolocation is essentially a biological sonar. Sonar standing for sound, navigation, and ranging. This uses sound to figure out where you are, what's going on, and to kind of map out the area. So this is a propagation of sound, the movement of sound through a medium. And this medium can be air, like I mentioned, or water. Another example of propagation is light propagating through the sky and things like that. So animals emit a sound. In this case, a bat can emit a certain sound, or a dolphin. And when the sound comes back, it can listen to the echoes that return to them. So what is an echo? I'm not a physicist, so I hope this definition works. So this is a delayed reflection of sound from a source. It's proportional to the distance of the object and its makeup. So this is a technical word for, let's say you're in a big room and you say a word. We know that the sound comes from your mouth and will bounce off of a surface, and you'll hear an echo. And that echo depends on how far you are away from that surface, how big the surface is, what the surface is made of, etc., etc. So these sounds these animals, these bats in this case, emit can help them understand, well, what's around them and what's going on. Because bats are pretty much blind. There's a phrase that says blind as a bat. Can't see very well at all. And echolocation is used for a number of things, and it's particularly used for hunting. So most of us know that bats have horrendous eyesight. So they need to use this echolocation to figure out what's going on. They need to be able to navigate in the total darkness. What's interesting about echolocation is that it can be used to determine how far away an object is, what the object is shaped like, how dense it is, and if the object is moving. And this is particularly useful when it comes to hunting. Now, they generate this ultrasound that allows them to kind of map out things via their larynx or voice box. The frequency is about 14,000 to 100,000 hertz. This is far beyond the human hearing ability, so we can't really hear what's going on. So bats can determine the elevation of an object by something called interference. Interference is when two waves, as I think of sound waves, they combine with each other, and that results in a greater intensity wave or a lesser intensity wave. So it can be like this wave plus this wave. Now, this interference is caused by echoes that reflect from the ear flaps. So if we zoom in here, we'll see that this bat is producing these sounds that go out in these waves, and then they hit something, let's say a butterfly, and this will reflect those waves back. And that is the interference when they come in contact with each other. Now, when these waves interfere with each other and they hit the bat's ear flaps, the bat can determine with very, very good accuracy where the object is in space. Is it above me? Is it below me? Is it in front of me? And the production of these sounds is in sync with the beat of the bat's wings. And beat can be defined as the interference between two sounds of different frequencies. I say all that to say that this whole process of echolocation and the movement of the bat is very specified and very, very necessary for navigation. What's interesting about bats is that they have these custom signals. Depending on the species and the environment and the prey, they can use different frequencies to navigate. Now, these calls can overlap, and they're not always specific to the species, but the whole point of this little section here is to show the diversity and the skill of bat species in how these animals adapt their environment into their prey, into all sorts of other stuff. It's very, very interesting. So in the search for prey, they do a couple things. they produce these clicks. And first, the clicks are at a pretty low rate, decent amount of clicks per second. What's interesting is that the emission of these clicks, the breathing of the bat, and the beats of the wings are all in sync. And this helps conserve energy. Another really, really interesting fact. Because as a bat is trying to navigate, it needs to be as efficient as possible and use the least amount of energy. So once the target is found, the clicks increase and increase and increase, and they become rapid pulses to lock in on the target. And at the end of the process is called the terminal buzz, when they found what they need and they're closer and closer and closer until they get it. I didn't have time to get into it, and I'm not an expert enough, but this whole slide, I'm pretty sure someone can make a whole series on how bats use echolocation, because the whole concept of echolocation is relatively complex and very, very interesting depending on the species. This is just bats. There's dolphins and all sorts of species use this very interesting technique. And lastly, I couldn't end this video without talking about echolocation and the blind. So what's interesting is that as human beings, we know we have our senses. But if one of our senses gets taken away for one reason or another, the brain compensates. In this case, the brain compensates for the loss of vision. And in the brain, when there is this loss over time, the area used for visual processing can be used to interpret echoes. So the brain can learn to interpret echoes like interpreting signals to the eyes. Now, echolocation is a learned skill, but as you learn it, the possibilities are endless. Sticks, canes, clicks can be used to, just like a bat or a dolphin, determine what's around you and what's going on. And as you get more advanced in the skill, you can really do some pretty amazing things. You can use specific sounds for specific purposes. We just talked about how the bats have specific sounds that can be used for specific things. The research shows incredible precision, like understanding textures, gaps, traffic, and all sorts of other things. Now, I've only seen this once, but I remember a few years ago I was walking down a street and someone was walking opposite of me and they were blind and they're making these clicks. And I've also seen people with little devices they can click. And I knew it was for echolocation, but I didn't realize how useful it is. And as someone who can see, just like a lot of you guys, echolocating is just very hard to grasp, but it's very, very cool to see it used. And there's some interesting benefits in that it can produce better mobility, confidence. It's great for safety, because I can't imagine being blind, but having this skill to echolocate is very, very advantageous and seems like it's incredibly useful just for day-to-day life. So let's go back through the video and review what we learned. We talked about how echolocation was a biological sonar using sound to propagate through air or water, in the case of dolphins, to listen to echoes that return after hitting a surface. And animals like dolphins or bats use this to determine what's around them and to navigate. We spoke about how bats use this to determine how far an object is. What is it shaped like? Is the object moving? They can determine the elevation of an object. And all this is very, very accurate. We learned about how bats will have custom signals to adjust to the prey and the location they're in. And in their search for prey, they produce these clicks. And depending on how far or close they are from their target, the click rate will change in order to lock in on the target, let's say a bug. These clicks are incredibly useful because this is how these animals navigate on a day-to-day basis. Then we closed out talking about echolocation and the blind. We mainly just talked about how humans who are blind can use and learn echolocation and not just have it as a unique skill, but a very, very useful skill that can produce better mobility, confidence, safety, and really accurate precision. And the brain compensates for the lack of vision and can interpret those echoes for navigation, all sorts of things like I just mentioned. That's all I got. I hope you guys learned a little bit about echolocation. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching and listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Tell your friends, and I'll be back soon with another video. And I hope you have a happy Halloween.